And okay, so we're live. So hi, Aileen. It's really great to meet you face to face, and thank you for agreeing to participate in this Cresswell podcast. This will be hosted on the Cresswell website, and what we're trying to do is just to find a way to spread the word about hospitality sustainability, and really just dive a little bit deeper into some specific areas. So, what I found intriguing about your profile on LinkedIn and chatting with you is that you've set up your own sustainability company after spending many years in hospitality. And I just wondered if you could tell me and the viewers a little bit about your journey into founding AC Eco.
Okay. So it was something that had been in the pipeline, in the plan for a few years. I worked overseas for a while, and I worked in Egypt, where I could clearly see the correlation between new build hotels and reefs dying, and the damage it was doing to our coastline. Um, and that kind of triggered me into thinking, right, well, what are we doing? What are we doing as a hotel that's killing our reefs? And a lot of that was down to the chemicals that we were using in housekeeping, going straight from the hotel out onto the reef. The waste from the hotel, from build to operations, was killing the very reason we were there. And that made me stop in my tracks and think. And from then on, during my career, from then on, I moved to the Olympics, where we had a zero to landfill policy, which was complete. I mean, how can you run housekeeping zero to landfill?
Right.
But we needed to do it. They were the target set, and that's what we managed to do. And we did it by looking at procurement first. So whenever we were buying, we looked at the full cycle of whatever we were buying, and how we were getting rid of it was part of the purchase decision process making,
Okay.
which eliminated one of our waste streams. And I thought was, we need to be rolling this out throughout the industry.
Right.
It's brand new. Nobody's ever run a zero waste housekeeping before,
Okay.
but it's doable.
Right.
Um,
What with regard to all those years you spent in housekeeping, in terms of the big sort of number in terms of like cost waste. I mean, I know, we've got a lot of things like soap and detergents, and people used to use a lot of those little mini bottles and things like that. But what would you say were the big ticket items that you thought were the most wasteful, if you like?
Certainly laundry.
Yeah. Okay.
Laundry outstrips everything else.
Right. Okay.
Um, there's a
Right.
huge financial cost
Right. Right.
associated with laundry.
Yeah. I mean, I remember kind of taking over hotels. I mean, in the time when I used to work with Shangri-La, and one of the first things I would do is to go and look in the storerooms and see what inventory was there. And I remember looking at mountains of, sheets and towels that were basically what they use the term condemned. Okay, but and they would just sit there, unless for some reason somebody would donate them to some charitable cause. But of course, nowadays there are these companies that you can
There
downcycle
are.
and they'll come and take your stuff. I mean, why is it that so much money is wasted on inventory, do you think?
I think it's not monitored. I don't think a lot of GMs and hotel chains really understand how much money they're losing through
Right.
housekeeping.
Yeah. I think that you're right. So you also see this with uniforms as well. I mean, you get piles and piles of uniforms that people leave, and then they don't fit the next person, and then so they may only have a 2 or 3 month life cycle, right? Yeah. When you were running hotels, were you in charge of deciding on uniforms, or was that the department head or the division head of a food and beverage? Or
So, oh, we've got low flying aircraft. Sorry.
yeah. Okay.
um, we would sometimes, in some hotels, you'd have an input, but often that would be a decision that was a head housekeeper would have, maybe in my department, but certainly not across the board. I wouldn't have a lot of say in reception or F&B
Right.
uniforms.
Right. So would you say that, in a way, textile management, let's call it for want
Yeah,
of a better word, is kind of in need of a big overhaul in hospitality?
yeah.
Yeah, and where would you start with that, do you think?
I think it has to remain in the hands of the housekeeper. The head housekeeper needs to be responsible for the linen in the hotel. One of the issues we have now is that housekeeping being outsourced, um, linen management and uniform management is becoming nobody's job.
Right, right.
The rooms are passed to the contractors, the
Yeah,
housekeeping contractors, but the little jobs that they're not so little, but the little jobs that would be added on to an executive housekeeper's role are not being picked up by
right,
anybody else.
right. So in terms of like how uniforms have evolved over the years, I mean, in your career, how what sort of changes have you seen in terms of, saying, up until like 10 years ago, nobody really talked about sustainability or, fabrics made from bamboo or plastic or whatever. Do you think that it's something that housekeepers are going to start looking at now because of this evolution?
I do think, and I think that the chefs in the kitchens are way ahead of housekeeping and other
Yeah,
departments
right.
in the experimental side of looking at fabrics that are more suitable for the job that they need them to do. Um, there are some really simple guidelines that we need from the fabric that we're making uniforms from.
Yeah,
It needs to come from a sustainable source. It needs to be washable at a low temperature and fast to dry, and it needs to be easily repaired or altered um,
right,
in order to extend its life cycle.
right.
And it needs to be
So what are some of
appropriate.
the common mistakes, just to interrupt you, what are some of the mistakes that companies make, whether it's the procurement department or the housekeeping or the chefs, when they're sourcing or selecting uniform fabrics? What are some of the mistakes that they make from your experience?
There would be, I mean, sustainability within fabrics is still quite new, so there's a lack of knowledge. There's a gap there where head housekeepers potentially don't know what is out there in the market and what
Right,
they should be
right.
looking for. They don't understand yet a circular economy. So when they're purchasing new uniform, they should be thinking about the whole life cycle and how they're going to dispose of it.
Okay, right.
And to find a uniform supplier with a closed cycle where
Yeah.
those uniforms can be sent back at the end
Okay,
of life
okay.
would be what they should be looking for.
Right. So typically, how long would, say, a uniform, how long should it last? If it was, say, a chef or a waiter, with aprons, or a housekeeping uniform, those basic sort of more hands-on type of jobs versus a guest relations type uniform, how long would they normally last in the life cycle?
Well, we say a t-shirt should have around 200 washes,
Okay.
and you're only going to want to be wearing them for one day.
Right, right,
So there, two t-shirts a year
right,
is an absolute minimum.
right, right. Okay.
If for two shifts, if they're doing 5 days a week, they need five
Hmm.
t-shirts.
Right, right.
Um, you
So
know,
if it was something like let's say a two-piece, with say a tunic and a pair of trousers, a housekeeping staff, do they wash them every day, or is it like, I mean, should they ought to wash
they
them every day?
they must absolutely for cross to
Okay.
prevent cross contamination.
Right,
They really need to be, and it's a hot and sweaty job. They
right,
need
right.
to be changing their uniforms every day.
Okay.
And it depends on the hotel whether they're washed in house or they're expected to launder them themselves.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
there's a lot to be said for the laundry process, what temperature they're washed at, what they're
Yeah.
washed using.
Okay.
Um, One of the large hotels in London recently, they wash all of their staff uniform. They've recently put a new system in, £500,000 worth of machinery and process, and they expect that to double the life of the uniform that they're
Okay.
purchasing.
Right, right. Okay. So I guess a lot of hotels can't. actually, procure their own, or because of space, so they outsource it, right? So yeah, that's true. So in terms of, say, how uniforms have evolved from, say, the last 10 or 15 years, and what you've observed, are there is there anything that you think, if you want to call them minimalist style uniforms, or I mean, what are we now looking at? I mean, are there still hotel brands that are spending a lot of money on designers and using designers to create brand DNA uniforms, or people tending to look at more generic stuff that they can buy off the shelf?
I think across, depending on the level of the hotel, the more high end hotels are still very much looking at their bespoke uniforms. But as you come down the chain, there's a lot more generic buying of uniforms online.
Mm,
We've got all the information there, and it's a click button process.
okay. So if you knew of a company, for instance, that was able to, say, design a uniform for your brand. Let's say you have a brand that is, a sort of city center hotel, which is a sort of a heritage angle to it. It's boutiquey, it's very stylized, and you were able to go to a company that, say, could create a style based on your brand DNA using, say, AI,
Yeah.
and that, they could then offer you a range of different sustainable fabrics, and also agree that they would perhaps take back all your old stock and downcycle it for either for your property, or for, and maybe almost like give you some money back or a discount off of your uniform, because you're giving them back fabric that they can use. Would that be something that would be of interest? And is anybody doing that in the UK?
I'm not aware of anybody doing it with uniforms at the
Yeah,
moment.
right,
Um, I think it definitely will be the way forward,
right,
particularly with the focus on reducing carbon footprints. Every little every little piece is going to count,
right, right.
um, and getting that closed cycle is a great option for reducing carbon footprint.
And that way, I mean, if a new staff was to come on duty, you tell them, okay, this is the link. You just pick your own uniform from this thing, and then it could be delivered to them within 2 weeks, right? And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and when their uniform needs to be replaced, they just do the same thing. So in a way, it's a very generic sort of way of approaching it. So was that was that PDF that I sent you about Cresswell? Was that something of interest? Cresswell's what
absolutely.
Cresswell's doing?
Some very, very beautiful uniforms on there,
Yeah,
and the idea of the simplicity of the ordering process, and the um the research that's gone into creating something that is truly becoming a sustainable fabric.
hmm,
It's going to be work in process for many years, but it
right.
is so great to see those steps being made.
Do you think that there's a kind of a marketing angle to this, without a hotel sort of going out and greenwashing, but to be able to say we are proud to tell our customers that, all our uniforms are made of sustainable products, and it's a supply chain that, is all focused around reducing the carbon footprint? Do you think that's something that's marketable?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The more and more of we know more and more tourists are looking for sustainable options and sustainable stories, and to have a sustainability policy that encompasses the whole hotel and everything in it. So
right.
sustainability isn't something you think about as an add-on,
Mm,
it's the core decision making process. So it involves everything within the hotel,
right.
and then you've got a story,
Great. Okay.
and uniforms are part of that story.
Yeah. I mean, I know you conduct workshops, and you teach and you lecture about housekeeping practices. Is this new, idea something that you would be, um, telling your
Absolutely.
viewers about, or
Yeah.
your participants about,
Yeah.
as a an innovation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I'm in hotels, either as an auditor or as a consultant, I'm always there to offer solutions, whichever is the best solution, the right solution for that hotel at that
Okay.
point in time. And I can
Right.
see where this product would fit really nicely for many hotels.
Okay. Good. In your some of your posts and on your website, I've noticed that you talk about the 80% challenge.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on what that is?
So the 80% challenge with the linen is it's been it's been worked out that 80% of linen does not make it to its 200 wash life cycle.
Right.
And of that 80% is down to linen misuse.
I
So
see.
the other 20% is down to guest misuse. Guests
When
will
you
use,
say misuse, what do you mean? Like, you mean damaging practices, or
so
yeah,
towels being used to wash floors, pillowcases being used as cleaning cloths for
right,
mirrors,
right.
pillowcases being used as laundry bags and ripping, um, linen being left out on floors, dragged, dragged along by the
Yeah.
corners, these
Can you
kind of
give us
things.
an example of somewhere that you've perhaps gone in and consulted for and given them, maybe a success story
Yeah,
about how to train people not to do those
yeah.
things?
So there's a beautiful video called Pasha the Pillowcase, which I honestly believe that every housekeeper should be showing to their team.
Right,
It's on YouTube. It's a very short video made by the laundry companies to show the life cycle of a pillowcase, to give them an understanding
right.
of what is involved in the
Okay,
life cycle of that pillowcase,
right,
and to, I mean, it's a funny, it's humorously done, but to understand there is a cycle and there is a lot of energy and has gone into the production of that pillowcase.
right,
So to
right,
start treating the linen with a bit of respect, and then ensure that the process is simple. When I was working with a large caravan park,
yeah,
the linen there was horrifically abused. It was always put inside a pillowcase, and then rain or shine left outside to be collected in the
right,
mud
yeah,
normally.
yeah, yeah,
And the problem that we had was twofold. One, the laundry company were complaining that we were damaging their linen. And two, the girls were taking ages to make beds because they'd put a cover on, they'd have to take it off, they'd put another
mm,
cover on, they'd have to take it off. They were going through the cycle of,
right,
of damaged linen. So we bought some big trolleys with
yeah,
plastic covers over them. And in the mornings, when the linen went out, the linen trolleys went out, which
right,
some of them were fixed, some of them were mobile. The laundry van would then go round and collect from the covered the covered boxes,
right. I see.
and it massively reduced the amount of dirty linen.
Right. Okay. Is there a way that, let's say, for a mid-size hotel, right? If, let's say, a 200-room hotel, if we were to put a number on, the kind of cost impact of premature linen replacement, what would you give, like, a big picture number,
Big picture numbers are huge. From doing the maths, we're looking at some anywhere from £50,000 upwards.
Right, right,
Potentially, if there's nobody managing that linen, you could be looking at over £100,000 worth of
right.
unnecessary expenditure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think we looked at the way we can, that could be
that
calculated.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to that in the description afterwards, when we post this. But yeah, there is a mathematical way of working it out, and
yes,
it's actually quite staggering. You don't think it's going to be that much, but
no,
actually, it really adds up. And I
and
think
that's for one hotel.
yeah, that's just one. Yeah, you imagine a chain, and then you add uniforms on top of that as well.
Yeah,
So if you were to think about this question of balancing, say, a sort of luxury guest expectation in terms of sustainable practices with, let's say, carpet and upholstery care, How do you balance that? Because you want something that is going to be durable,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the carpet's got to have a kind of nice, soft, squidgy, luxurious feel, and the same with the upholstery on furniture and things like that. How does one balance that?
So for me, one of the very important first things is a really good entrance mat that stop the dirt getting in the first place.
Right, right,
And the new modern entrance mats are they're a different league to where
right.
they used to be. They
Okay.
really will clean the dirt from
Yeah.
shoes and prevent us bringing it into the being brought in the first place. Then a regular maintenance of carpets with a dry shampoo machine or dry. You can get some great machines now that don't wet the carpet, so the
Okay.
room doesn't get put out of service. And they should just be on the rolling rotor of keeping the carpets and the upholstery clean. Every room should be checked every month,
Right.
and a
Okay.
maintenance clean done where it's needed. A maintenance done clean done anyway,
Right.
and then a spot clean done when needed.
Okay. So, is there anything like really innovative that you've seen that can extend the carpet life other than those things you've mentioned?
Um, just good care, just
Yeah.
good care. A good quality vacuum cleaner, vacuumed regularly
Right.
and kept clean, and you
And
can
try and
extend
keep away, because I agree with you. I mean, I think one of the worst things you can do is make them wet. These
it.
shampoos
Just
that because they always have that kind of wet dog smell a couple of days
yeah.
later. Yeah.
And all that actually happens is the water in the fabric spirals the dirt to the bottom, and you take a clean layer off the top, and then
Right.
as you walk across the carpet, that dirt just comes back up again.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
don't really clean as
No.
well
No.
as a dry system can. There's some
Right.
great dry systems out there.
Hmm. Okay. I know that you post quite a lot on LinkedIn about slippers. I think it's one of your pet peeves. Tell us about the
Oh,
slipper debate. It's
the
quite
great
interesting.
slipper debates. Yeah,
Yeah.
do we, don't we? What do we do with slippers? Um, I have a quote. How many pairs of slippers does a CEO need? Because that's whose rooms the slippers get left in.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the independent hotel show recently, and they're now the higher end rooms. They're putting higher end slippers in with the "Please take us home" wrapper on it.
Okay. Right.
How many pairs of slippers does our CEO need? Because
Yeah.
that's who's staying in these high rooms, these high cost rack rate rooms.
Right. Right.
They don't need slippers. They don't
No.
need them.
No.
Um, Slippers are single use. They Nobody takes them home. When we do a waste management survey of housekeeping, which every housekeeper should be doing regularly, taking an inventory of their waste,
Hmm.
these slippers go into the room and then they come out of the room,
Right.
and they're worn from the bathroom to the bed and back to the bathroom.
Right. Right.
Most of them are non compostable, non biodegradable, and sent in a plastic bag.
Right.
And this is because it's a brand standard.
Right. Right.
Brand standard, we're going to give our VIPs a pair of slippers.
What would you replace them with? I mean, when I was in Prague recently, I stayed in an NH hotel, which is part of the Minor Group. And I remember going down for breakfast, and some people had actually worn their slippers to the breakfast,
Right.
and they were kind of getting dirty looks from the staff.
Okay.
As much to say, why are you wearing slippers in the restaurant? But actually, the whole idea was that you would wear them throughout the
Yeah.
hotel, right?
Yeah.
So and not use your day shoes. But yeah, I mean, what could you just don't provide any at all,
Ask.
or what?
Ask on
That's
check
them.
in.
Okay.
Would you like a pair of slippers? We'll
Hmm.
bring them to your room.
Okay.
It's so simple.
Right.
Most of our certainly our corporate guests will say no.
Hmm.
Wedding guests, they're going to want them.
Yeah. Right.
Holiday guests maybe want them, but
Right.
a corporate guest staying in a nice city centre hotel does not want another pair of slippers.
No. No. I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, do bathrobes get used? I mean, I know some
Yes.
hotels in Asia they have the kimono style, kind of a cotton one, and then they've got the thick towel in
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Um, you don't have any issue with those, right?
They're reused. So when we're purchasing them, we should be looking for something that is quick dry, quick wash, quick dry.
Right.
And but they are often used. They are a luxury item, but we can't impact the guest experience. So we
Yeah.
need to be minimizing the impact for them
Okay.
by providing a dressing gown that has that is functional, that will
Right.
wash easily, um, and can be reused many
Right.
times.
So typically in this country, in the UK, if a guest checks in on say day one, how frequent? Let's say they're there for a 10-day stay.
Right.
How frequently would they get a new bathrobe?
Whenever they leave it on the floor,
Okay, then
if
it
it's
would be
hung up,
replaced. Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
leave it hung up.
Okay.
If it's on the floor, we'll change it.
And what about towels?
Same.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they should be changed every 3 days, regardless.
Okay.
But if they're left on the floor, they'll get
Right.
changed. If they're
Okay.
hung up, then they shouldn't.
Right. Right. So if when you do your talks to hotels and you specialize in talking to them about this sort of sustainability journey, right? What are the top sort of three things that you're advising them in handling that transition from a traditional type of hotel to a more sustainable room amenity based hotel? And what are the sort of low hanging fruit that you think they can make an impact with?
Okay. So particularly within sustainability, we always look at the big three: energy use, water use, and waste management. All of which housekeeping have a huge impact on.
Right.
Uh, Ensuring that the staff team leave the room with all the lights out, all the power out, that they understand the building management system for
Mhm.
the heating and the cooling, and they leave it as, whichever way has been agreed as the best way
Right.
for that room, which should be everything off and no heating or air conditioning on here in the UK. Most rooms will be to the temperature you want within 5 minutes. So we don't need the air conditioning or the heating running in empty rooms. Um, Water is a huge one. Hotels that I'm visiting have a water flow rate of up to 24 or 26 litres per minute.
Right.
With a simple test and a restrictor, this can be brought down to 8 litres a minute.
Wow.
And 8 litres is the perfect shower.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a huge, huge saving
Okay.
on water, financial saving to be made on water.
Right.
Um, and waste management in housekeeping, it's not a subject really. Housekeepers have a
Yeah.
black bag, and
Right.
everything goes in it, and all of that waste is contaminated. So
Mm.
whatever the waste stream further on down is, housekeeping need to have their recyclable bag and their non-recyclable bags,
Right.
and understand what goes where, with
Okay.
batteries, paper,
Mm.
and understanding that if there's a big event, that's going to create waste, and
Right.
managing that waste, having a plan in place to manage that waste.
Okay. And then with regard to amenities specifically, I mean, I noticed in this country, if you stay in a decent hotel in London, like at the Rosewood or a higher end hotel, they still do give you the small uh, toiletry amenities in small bottles. Some are using the larger type of, so
Okay.
they're using a more upscale product, like say ASOS or something like not ASOS, Aesop or one of those products, but they're putting it into a sort of a larger container on the wall. Um, is there anything you think that there is a significant opportunity to reduce cost and to be sustainable in a way that maybe the guest notices it and says, "Oh wow, look at that! That's a great idea. that, I mean, look what they've done here, kind of thing, in terms of amenities and anything that you can think of, or maybe
There's
your travels where you've seen things that you think that, well, that's a brilliant idea. I could actually, you know, steal that idea and use that in my hotel or in my teaching.
lots. I still learn new things every day. I was in a
Right.
hotel in Bristol, and they write the welcome message on the mirror.
Yeah. Okay.
Saves a piece of paper,
Right.
and it just gets wiped away each time.
Mm,
The transition from single use to bulk amenities is a
mm,
transition that has to happen. As an industry, we just have to say no to these single use plastic bottles. They
right. Right.
are slowly being phased out, um, but they're still there, and I,
Yeah.
for one, struggle with it. We can make nice guest packs available from reception. If
Yeah.
people want it,
Yeah.
we can make a nice guest pack. Here you go. We don't have to impact the guest
Mm,
experience.
right.
If your guest is checking in just because they want that lovely amenities pack and
Mm.
some cotton buds and a sewing kit, let's have a nice little pack behind reception and we can offer it to them.
Which is really what the airlines do now. I mean,
Yeah.
not so much EasyJet, but you know, a lot of the if you go on a long haul flight, they'll give you a little pouch, you know, with
Mhm.
slippers in it and an eye mask and some earbuds and things like that. So I think they've pretty much copying one another now, and I think they've reduced it to the bare minimum that they think customers are willing to accept. Um, in terms of just talk a little bit about implementation now. Let's say a hotel wants to sort of say, okay, we want to start from scratch and overhaul our whole textile management system, you know, from the uniforms to the towels to the linen, everything. You know, what would be the first step that you would recommend as a consultant?
Let's do a stock take, see what we've got.
Yeah,
Um, and then from that, we'll work out what we need. And then we'll work out what we're going to do with what we've got.
right.
And then we'll work out where we're going to get what we want from.
Okay,
That would be my process,
right. Would
ensuring that
you are hotels tending to lease their linen now or rent it from hotels, or are they still going out and buying it?
a lot of hotels I find now are leasing their linen.
Hmm.
There is a lot more leased linen, which I think removes some of the responsibility and the ownership of that linen from the head
Yeah,
housekeeper.
right.
That linen used to be my linen, and
Hmm.
that linen came off my bottom line and my budget.
Right, right.
And I owned it, and it was my job to look after it, and I answered to the GM
Yeah.
for every piece of linen that got ruined.
Hmm.
Now that there's nobody in that role taking control and charge and being responsible for that linen, and it's falling between the
Yeah.
cracks.
But I think even then, if a leasing company or a laundry cleaning company was to be able to go out and say, look, you know, we use exclusively sustainable linen fabric. You know, the fabric is made from,
Yes.
you know, whatever bamboo or plastic bottles or whatever it is, and it's of an excellent quality, and we use, you know, biodegradable products to the cleaning, and there's no dye and all this, that, and the other. I think that at some point there's probably going to be some legislation around this in this country. I mean, at the moment, there isn't really anything. But do you see a time when government will legislate against this, against the bad practices that are happening, and encourage this type of thing? Because I think otherwise it's very hard to get people to buy into it, isn't it?
For sure. The bottom line is always the bottom line. I
Hmm.
do believe the new reporting of scope 3 emissions will impact a lot of decisions that are being made. So when companies have to report their scope 3 emissions, which
Yeah.
is all of their customers, all of their resources, uniform will be included in that. So they'll be looking to get the most
Right.
sustainable uniform they can
Yeah.
in order to keep their scope 3 emissions down. That
Okay.
will spur hotels on. In order to get green accreditation, every year on year, we're looking at hotels reducing their carbon footprint. So
Right.
again, it may only be a small reduction in the overall carbon footprint. Yes, solar panels on the roof is going to way outstrip
Yeah.
uniform, but
Right.
every single thing counts.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
and with more and more hotels, new build hotels, building as net zero lifetime buildings, they
Yeah.
will be looking for the most sustainable uniforms that
Right.
they possibly can.
Okay. So I think we talked recently about um, you attending
Yeah.
the independent hotel show in London, which I wasn't able to meet you at. But you mentioned there that we observed that there was only two companies, or perhaps three, that were in the sort of uniform business
Yeah.
there, and they were quite bespoke. But
Very bespoke.
I actually wrote afterwards to the independent hotel people in charge of it, and offered that next year Cresswell could present,
Hmm.
and showcase and do a little discussion like we're having about sustainable materials. Um, and I'm hoping that there could be
Great.
some interest from them, because I think that the more we can share about this type of
Yeah.
thing, and because it is definitely an emerging trend, and when there is an ROI there as well. So you're basically saying, okay, we can get you uniforms really fast. We can design them for free, using your brand DNA. We can either copy what you've got, or we can upscale it to a higher level using AI. We can make it from sustainable materials. We can make it cheaper.
Yeah.
It's kind of a no-brainer in a
Absolutely.
way, right? So I think that it's definitely something that I think can gain some traction.
Hmm.
And I know that certainly in Hong Kong, where they're using it now, they've got it already in 16 schools. They're using it for school uniforms, and they take back all the old uniforms, because kids grow very fast, so they
Yes.
downcycle the old fabrics and use them for other things. So on the final point, if hoteliers could say, just make one change tomorrow to improve their textile sustainability, what could it be?
One change tomorrow. Um, yeah, I think it would be making sure, absolutely sure, that every piece of linen, every piece of fabric is treasured,
Yeah.
and there is an understanding that of the resources that went into the making of it,
Okay.
and that it's just respected. Every piece of linen needs to be treated.
Right.
When I was working in Egypt, I had a female linen, my linen queen, I used to call her. She was in charge of my linen room, and she would say, "It's all of them are like my scarf." So
Hmm.
she every piece of linen she treated like her favourite headscarf.
Right. Right.
Fold them and she'd put them all away, and no
Yeah.
way was anyone going to mess her
Yeah.
linen up
Yeah.
because they'd have to
Interesting.
answer to her.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
that's what every hotel needs: somebody who is will be passionate about their
Yeah.
linen.
Okay. Okay, great. So just to sort of round up now, Aileen, what's next for AC Eco and the future for you? And, what are your plans over the next few months?
So, well, it's to keep the sustainability courses going. I'll be running one in November and one in December, and to just keep. I'm in and out of hotels all the time with Green Key, looking at ways that they can achieve green accreditations and what they
Okay,
still need to do to achieve that,
great.
and working with hotels that are looking at upgrading
Excellent.
and
Good.
how they're going to get rid of what they've already got,
Right,
what resources are available. And there are resources out there. Places like the British Heart Foundation will come en masse to a hotel and take all of the mattresses, all of the bed frames, all of the bedside cupboards, all of the lamps, whatever needs thrown away.
right.
They'll make a plan and come and take it, and then source it out to somewhere else.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
excellent. Great. So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to, you know, to if you have the opportunity to share about what Cresswell's doing,
Yeah,
in that
definitely.
PowerPoint presentation, or you know, if you would like to, you know, collaborate, or if you want me to come along with you one day and come and talk to your customers,
Definitely.
not only about that product, but also about my experience in Asia and how they do things over there. As a former general manager, I'll be happy to, you know, collaborate with you or
That would be
participate in anything.
fantastic. I
Yeah,
think there's some great learnings to from the hotel icon
yeah,
in Hong Kong. I think that some of the experiments that have been done there
yeah,
are just phenomenal to roll out to the rest of the
yeah.
industry.
I mean, the one thing that I did there that I think I sent you the link on the Hotel Icon sustainability uh, website. The When I was in the States, there was a hotel chain called One Hotels, and they I stayed at the one in Miami, and they had this little water faucet, you know, that was in the corner of the room, or between the bathroom and the bedroom,
Right.
and it was very elegantly done. It kind of looked like what you see in a park, you know, where people can go and press the button,
Hmm.
or in a gym. But it was very elegantly, you know, incorporated into the design of the room from day one. And it was really like a little faucet, so you could go and put your a beaker, a specific beaker. It wasn't really a glass; it was more like a beaker underneath, and then get cold water that had gone through sort of millions of microns of filtration, and you could either have it sparkling or you could or have it still, because you know, people are a bit funny about drinking tap water. They're not really sure if it's potable or if it's not, or has it got fluoride in it. So this was very popular. So they completely did away with plastic bottles in the room, and you could buy Evian or, you know, Voss water, but they were in glass bottles in the fridge.
Yeah.
But they marked them up to an extent that you wouldn't be incentivized. You know, you'd think, "Wow, I'm not going to pay £5 for a bottle of water." So you tended to use these little faucets. And I introduced the idea when I got back. I took some video of it, went underneath it, looked at all the paraphernalia, and I showed it to our chief engineer. And I said, "Could we introduce this to the hotel?" And he said, "Let me check in the room." So he looked at all the plumbing, and he said, "Yeah, we can actually do a pipe off of the water mains in the bathroom." And there was a long ledge there, which was marble. So he very cleverly incorporated this faucet there with this filtration system in it. It was so popular, you know, and it reduced the amount of money we were spending on plastic bottles of giving away water. And people were very happy with it. We could have it carbonated or uncarbonated, and it was a very simple thing, but it made a huge impact on the costs. You know, it reduced it significantly, and of course all the LED bulbs we changed and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting. If you we also, because we were a teaching hotel, a lot of other hotels came to look at what we'd done, and many of them tried to incorporate it into their hotels as well. And it was very inexpensive to do. I think each room, it only cost about £10 or £12 per
Right.
room to actually do it,
Wow.
which was really cool. But anyway, thank you very much for you know, sharing with us today. And I think we did a pretty good job on the timing. It's almost 45 minutes, so well
Great.
done.
Brilliant. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome, and I will share with you the link, and if you want to share it with your, you know, with your followers or anything, it's
Brilliant.
that would be welcome. And as I say, if you can be an ambassador for, you know, these ideas and this product, that would, I'm
Absolutely.
sure other people would love to find out about it. Great,
Brilliant.
thanks a lot, Aileen. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much
Richard.
indeed.
Thank
Okay, all the
you.
best. Thanks a lot.